right, let's jump into TikTok. Today we are going to get rich by doing the corporate ladder. Let's see what this gentleman has to say.
If you're studying finance and you don't want 70 to 80-hour work weeks and work-life balance is your main priority, then check out this career path. If you don't care about stress or work-life balance, then go check out medium and hard mode. Alright, step 1. College. Your goal is to get an internship as a financial analyst or in corporate finance, but target tech companies, pharma, biotech, energy, and healthcare companies. Even financial companies, but work-life balance there will be a little bit worse. You just need to get some type of experience. This will be hard and difficult, and it'll be a lot of work up front. But after you get this internship, you can job hop around pretty easily. Alright,
Well, so far I'm not necessarily seeing the work-life balance aspect of it. What he's saying, though, is generally correct. If you do have internships, plural, not one, then you are already having some sort of experience and it makes it easier for you to find potential employment afterwards. So I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. I don't know why he selected the types of sector that he had selected, because none of them, at least to my knowledge, are particularly friendly from the work-life spectrum. So you will need to work just as hard as in other sectors if you want to make a career. So far, parts of his tip is correct, but his main message in terms of making it in a very work-life balance friendly way is incorrect, specifically in finance.
Postgrad. For your first few years out of college, you should try to get into a rotational program at a large company. You spend anywhere from 3 months to 2 years rotating around different business units, but it's mainly focused on finance, accounting, treasury, etc. You'll learn a lot about how the company works, but it's because the company is trying to train you for a leadership role. But don't get a big head, because no one at the company gives a fuck about you yet. So you have to make the right connections and learn a lot. You'll be making around 60 to 80K your first year. Alright, after
So what he's saying is, again, part of it is true.
you've been at
Yes, rotational programs do make sense. However, not every company is immediately giving that to newcomers, because it also needs to make sense for the company, which he kind of leaves out in his explanation. Secondly, his comment that you need to make the right connections in order to get ahead in a company suggests that that is the way of how you make a career. And whilst networking is important, it is by large and far not the most important topic. You should, in your first years, make sure that you become an expert in what you're doing and become really, really knowledgeable and good at what you're doing. That will get you ahead. And that also comes with more hours that you need to invest, more diligence that you need to put in, more extracurricular activities, and more studying. So it's quite the opposite of not working 60 plus hours, specifically in your early 20s when you're starting
the company for a little bit, you'll move into the senior analyst position. You want to start learning how the managers are doing their jobs, because that's the next step for you. You'll basically become the senior in high school that's ready to get out of there. You'll be making around 90 to 110K. If you see a path up, then stay at the company. If you don't, then job hop. After you
So I always have a problem with kind of income bandwidth, because that is so dependent on where you're living. If you're living on the coasts of the United States, then what he is saying for larger companies and senior analyst positions, that is definitely doable. In the Midwest portion and larger portions of Europe, the type of money that he's talking about for a senior analyst position would simply not be paid. And he's also suggesting that the moment that you become senior analyst, the company already has a career path for you in mind. So the next step will be manager. He's simply not talking about the fact that in order to qualify to become a manager, you need to undergo additional training. You typically need to train in terms of how to lead and interact with others, how to meaningful become a leader. And you also need to have some sort of topic expertise, specifically in a topic heavy field like finance. You can't just be a people leader as a generalist. So he's leaving that out, and I wish he would focus more on that, because his tip suggests get the right buddies, just work through your senior analyst stage, and then road to riches, you become a manager. And that in itself is already not true. Plus, The moment that you hit middle management, the workload typically starts to increase. Most of the middle managers easily work 50 plus hours. The majority of the ones that want to go even further will work 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. And that includes all of the expected work that you need to be doing. And it's not even talking about, in finance in particular, year-end or quarter-end closures, where you do have work spikes that far exceed that even.
You've been doing the grunt work for a little bit, you'll move into management. You'll have your own team of analysts and you'll work a lot more closely with leadership, and you'll actually even have some ownership over some key reports. You'll be making around 140 to 160K, but obviously it depends on the company. All right, now
No, it also depends on where you are working, because 140 to 160, that is, I assume, total comp, is correct for middle management on the coasts of the United States and in large companies. It's incorrect for smaller companies, it's incorrect for the Midwest, and it is most certainly incorrect for large portions of Europe, where you would likely be tendentially a little bit lower and would have other types of benefits. So if you don't know the industry well enough, don't just make claims like that, or at least put an asterisk in there. This is already starting to annoy me a little bit.
next, director. You'll lead the financial planning for entire divisions and shape the company's overall strategy. You'll be working on complex projects like acquisitions, regulatory compliance, and large-scale investments. And you'll be working very closely with the CFO to manage investor relations.
It seems like he has read a book, or someone has told him a couple of buzzwords and he's just repeating them. Whilst it is true that you can work on that, it very much depends on your company, and it depends on the way that the company is structured. It just seems like he had asked ChatGPT, give me a couple of topics that a director of finance would do, and he's just parroting that without any context. For starters, to become a director in finance is everything but easy mode. In order to reach that level, you need to have a very high intrinsic motivation to deliver excellent work. You need to be a good leader, and you need to understand the matter well enough. Otherwise, you wouldn't even get there. Whilst compensation and what he is saying is generally okayish, the idea of making that on a time budget of 50 hours per week is laughable, because that is not how it works.
You'll be making around 180 to 250K, but this is where stock packages really start to make a difference. The next step is VP and then CFO. At those levels, you're basically overseeing everything finance related. The compensation obviously depends on company to company, but the real game-changing money comes from a stock package. The key to making a lot of money in this career path is to switch companies every few years. No. Don't stick at a company because you feel some type of loyalty to them. Go where it makes sense for your career. You'll have to job hop at least a few times because the finance divisions at these firms are so structured, and it's a slow path up, but you'll get to enjoy your life.
All right. My tip for you, if you are actually interested in corporate movement and climbing the corporate ladder, find a mentor that has been there. And there's someone who knows this path intimately. What he is saying is just a parody of reading from a book. It is like a blind person talking about color. He obviously has not lived through it, and he obviously has no idea how to do it. The idea of job hopping, by the way, without any penalties, also quite the contrary. If you cannot explain meaningfully why you have left your job regularly, then you will have a problem in further interviews. Mind you, that specifically roles like VPs and CFOs typically are not market addressed, but they are either sourced from within or from within a headhunting community that looks for people who have already had similar roles in the past. So in order to qualify for that, job hopping might not necessarily be the wisest choice, specifically if you're hopping for no particular reason other than I want to foster my own career. Because here is the kicker. The firm isn't stupid, and in the interviewing process, it is quite normal, specifically at senior roles, to have references and to be able to call your previous employers. And believe me, because I have received many of those calls, the feedback that the headhunter will get is quite frank and unfiltered. Therefore, if you have left the burned ground, and if you are known as someone who just wants to get ahead and who is leaving without any warning or reason behind it other than fostering yourself, then you will not get hired into certain roles. Because here is again a kicker: a company is interested in stability, specifically on the C suite. And you won't get that for people that are just in for what they're doing. The type of person that is working in that role is a highly intrinsically motivated, highly achievement driven, highly knowledgeable individual that really enjoys working in that field. And he should have brought those things forward, because that's the path to success, and not a get rich quick path in the corporate ladder game. So can't agree with what he has said, but I can't fault him either. He obviously does not know what he's talking about. All right, let's look at some fast money. I don't know how many I can record of those. They are indeed triggering, in a sense that I feel a headache from so much misinformation.
I became a millionaire at 23 years old, and the biggest piece of advice that I could give you guys is that networking is completely overrated. Everybody's like, oh, let me network with you. Let me create a group chat. Let me blah, blah, blah. It's completely overrated. What you need to be doing is, instead of spending all of your energy networking with people, build yourself up in order to be somebody that other people are dying to network with. I was always so focused on networking when I was building my career. I was like, oh, which rooms can I get around, which blah, blah, blah. Build your skill sets up, build yourself up in order to be somebody that other people are begging to be in a group chat with.
So far, the core idea of building yourself up is correct, but there are already inconsistencies in the storyline. She was a millionaire at 23, so she must have done something right. Then she talked about how early in her career she was continuously networking, which I then asked myself, when did you start your career? Even if you're a high school dropout and you start at 18, then arguably the years leading to 23 is still early in your career. So you have done the very thing that you're advising not to do, but clearly something else must have made you successful. So that's where you can already see that a narrative or a storyline seems to be made up. I don't want to be disrespectful. Maybe you are indeed someone who has made it and have become a millionaire with 23, but I have severe doubts based on what I'm hearing so far.
And then that way you can be selective. Couple different reasons. Number one, as a woman, people will want to hang around you because you're a pretty woman, and they will use different opportunities in order to kind of like dangle a carrot in front of your face, like opportunity. It's fake. Also, a lot.
That applies to a small demographic, to young females and pretty females on top of that. If you aren't falling in that demographic, which 80% of the people would not, that advice is not helpful. But let's move on.
A lot of people aren't really who they say they are. And that's like the truest thing that I could say. That, like, I'm not going to elaborate on that because it'll get me into a lot of trouble, but people are not who they say they are. Like, become a badass yourself, and the real ones will see, and the real ones will reach out to you, and you'll start networking with the right people instead of random people that want to network.
So now we're back to networking with the right people again instead of random people, which she has done. I would ask her, come to the point, please. We're a minute and 20 in, and she hasn't said anything of substance.
It should be a red flag. If somebody just wants to connect, just wants to network, like, yeah, that's cool sometimes, but for the most part, no. Because you know what? The real people that are running real businesses, that are making real money, that are real, like, they don't spend every single second of their day connecting.
That's true.
Because they're busy.
I wondered, I'll stop it here. I wondered to which degree this would still be successful if you would not be a young female. There was no content in here, and I wish I could get the 2 minutes that I've watched it back, but that was like a nothing burger that has been served. If you want to be rich early in your career, and then she says she had been a millionaire with 23, you shouldn't be networking, although I networked a lot, and then I found out that I need to network with the right people. Well, no shit, Sherlock. That was just horrible advice. All right, let's hope we're getting some better financial advice. The third one is around micro spending.
So you're in the camp of not caring too much about the small expenses, the coffee.
Yeah, it's a waste of time.
Why is it a waste of time?
Because they are $3 questions. If you actually added up how much they actually cost you, it's actually not that much. It's the simple joy that you enjoy in the morning. And you could spend your entire life agonizing over buying a coffee. But when I ask people, okay, so you stopped buying coffee for a month. How'd you feel? They go, oh, I felt okay. I go, what'd you do with the money you saved? They go, I don't know. It's in my checking account. Not only do you have to make the decision every single day to save on these tiny little things, you then have to properly invest that money, and you have to do this every single day for the rest of your life. What if we just got 5 critical decisions correct for the rest of our life and didn't have to worry about coffee?
All right, so far generally correct in what he is saying. However, there's always an asterisk to it, and I don't like absolutistic statements because it suggests you need to do that, and therefore the outcome will be that. So if your coffee only costs $3 and it's the only guilty pleasure that you have, he's correct, absolutely, no problem. If your coffee is a latte free double espresso something from Starbucks and you're doing that twice a day, it costs $10 twice a day, and then you're also getting a salad and a sandwich, and you're spending around $30-40 every day just for takeouts and for different coffees, then you do have a different topic. And specifically for the Americans, the overspending is quite real. We have record levels of consumer debt where people are just living beyond their means and using short-term debt in order to finance it. So I will say, whilst he is generally correct, that there is a pretty wise saying where you do have a jar, an empty jar, and then you do have 3 types of balls: large ones, medium ones, and small ones, aka cent. And the question is, please, the jar represents your life, and then you like fill it up with as much of the material that you want. And the right way of going about it is put the big balls in first and put the medium stones in, and then fill the rest up with sand, meaning get the big decisions correct and then worry about the medium ones, and the small ones will fill up the rest of the space. That part of his advice is correct. His assumption, or making it sound like it's just a $3 problem, however, is, I think, misleading and is a disjustice to people that are struggling with budgeting. The correct statement here should be, if you are good with budgeting, as in the rest of your finances are in order and you're spending less than you're earning, then don't worry about the $3 topics in your life, because that will not make or break it. But he's just pre-assuming that, and therefore I think the advice is not addressable or targetable to a broader audience. The people that are struggling with $3 coffees are typically the ones that don't have their finances in order.
Why are we playing so small? Let's talk about, are we investing properly? Do we have a target rate that we are doing? Watch this. I bet you so many couples watching this right now have had arguments about, why'd you spend so much at the grocery store? Why can't you stop spending so much on the kids? And on and on. But have they ever had conversations like this? What is our savings rate? Is it 4%, 6%, 7%? What is our investment rate? Is it 6%, 8%? Whatever the number is, let's make a rule that every December we increase it by 1%. If you just did that, if you increase your investment rate, meaning the percentage of your net income that you invest every single month, I always recommend people start off at 5 to 10%. Let's say you're at 6. If you make a rule, every December we're going to increase that by 1%, it will be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to you, more than all the coffee you ever buy in your entire life.
All right, so again, some of the things that he's saying is correct. I actually appreciate the advice that you should strive for a saving rate, and that you should also strive to increase that instead of decreasing it. That will prevent lifestyle creep and other topics that will bug you down. I would not start between 5 and 10%. In your early years, you should try to find employment and living conditions where you can save at least 30%. Potentially even more. 50% would be great of the net income, meaning you should live way below your means and get an early head start. And then over time, you can kind of keep that saving rate, but work on your income so that your lifestyle proportionally increases as well. That would be my tip towards that. I think what is quite telling is that his 1% rule equals many hundred thousands of dollars. is assuming a certain income bracket, because if you are earning national average, which I think is $38,000 as an income, or 70 odd $1,000 as a family income, the 1%, that's by the way gross. So if you net that, you're maybe down to 50K. 1% of that, the $500, nowhere near anywhere would, even with compounded interest, add up to, let's say, hundreds of thousands of dollars, even over the course of, say, the rest of your life, which might be 60, 70 years if we're being optimistic. So that statement is just trying to hit home a point that doesn't need to be hit home that intensely. Why can't people just be modest and honest instead of just making these extravagant claims that are not true? If you're saving regularly and you save 10% of your net income, that's good. If you are doing more than that every year, that is fantastic. All power to you. You will have a good retirement. But 1% of your net income, unless you're ultra wealthy, will not equal hundreds of thousands of dollars, even with compounded interest and investments over the rest of your life. It just won't. It will be less than that, but it will be significant, and you can simply say that it will be way more than the few coffees that you're consuming. Fair enough. Anyways, don't want to be too hard on the guy. I think he generally has a point. I just didn't like his delivery, because there is a bit of dishonesty and deception, and I like just factually correct statements. Let me know what you think about the 3 finance tips today, and see you in the next episode. Bye bye.